Hey, good afternoon. It's Monday afternoon, Memorial Day. This is Dan, the road trip guy, and welcome to the first episode of our podcast from the road. So I'm here with my firstborn, Lauren Neal, and we're just going to share some stories about road trips.
And it's a little bit of a spontaneous road trip today because you were not originally supposed to be joining this road trip.
No, this road trip, Lauren is traveling, was going to travel by herself from Cincinnati down to Redington Shores, Florida. About 940 miles, and, no dad should send his daughter off on a 940-mile road trip. Oh, in a 14-year-old BMW.
Well, it's not that I couldn't drive it, but...
Oh, of course, she's driven lots of road trips and lots of miles. It's not that she couldn't drive it.
I was just feeling especially tired.
Yeah, so at 7 o'clock last night, she tells me how tired she is. So here I am on the road trip.
Here
we are in South Georgia.
Just picked up some fresh peaches, some pork rinds.
Yeah, homemade pork rinds. Doesn't get any better.
So here we are, Memorial Day 2022.
Yeah, so we're reverse roles today, and then we're going to reverse again. She's going to ask me some questions, and then I'm going to ask her some questions about what else? Road trips. Because I'm Dan, the road trip guy.
And I am simply a road trip companion at this point.
Yeah, we should say this is really a drive to Florida. This is all about the destination. This has very little to do with the journey.
Yes, it's more about efficiency and getting there as quickly as possible. But still maintaining the speed limit, because we've noticed that today is the day that all the police are trying to meet their quota. We've passed, I don't even know how many at this point. How many police do you think we've passed on the road thus far?
Oh, I'm guessing it was 20 plus.
At least.
Every state.
Yes.
Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia. Yes.
Okay. All right. So, what better way to begin a conversation than with your first road trip memory? Is there a memory that you can specifically recall when you fell in love with the open road?
Yeah, well, I'd say there was two, actually, that, really stick out in my mind. My family, my parents and my brother would travel from Kentucky, our home, down to Orlando to spend, I guess was a week, with my great aunt and uncle. And so, anyway, I remember the 65 Plymouth Fury that we owned, bucket seats in the front.
I'm going to need a visual reference because I'm not quite sure what the what? The Plymouth Fury?
Fury.
I'm going to need a description, please.
Wow.
For those of us who are born after the boomer age.
So, yeah, we would probably need a picture of it. But anyway, it was, my dad was a big Plymouth Dodge guy. And so this was a two-door, very long car with a very long hood. So it's got bucket seats in the front, not a bench seat. It's got a shifter, much like the car we're driving.
Okay.
And so, but very roomy. Lots of room. AM radio. I remember listening to that AM radio.
Was there a go-to station?
Well, there were a few stations. So I don't remember any particular stations, though, that we would listen to. But anyway, does that give you enough reference?
That's great.
I mean, it was a very sporty car.
What was the color? Interior
it was white.
And exterior?
So it was white exterior.
My favorite.
Yes. And then kind of a black and brown mix on the interior. I really wish we had the car still. It's probably worth a lot of money, but we don't. But anyway, a beautiful car. You'll have to look it up.
I sure will.
65 Plymouth Fury.
I sure will.
Okay. So that trip, we went to Florida, and I don't know. I could be making this up, but what I remember, my dad liked to drive at night. You know, he was a owner-operator of a big truck, and I don't know, we probably took the back roads because that's just what he enjoyed. I don't really remember that part. I was probably, well, at that point, I was 4 or 5 years old, probably 5, maybe 6. Anyway, all I remember is my brother would get the back seat. There's no car seats. There's no, I think the front seats had actually seat belts. The back might have too, but I'm not sure anybody wore them in 1965. So anyway, my brother, I remember he would sleep in the back seat, stretched out. So he's 9 years older at that point, so he's like a teenager, right? And then I would sleep over the hump in the back floorboard. And I remember just feeling the heat come off of the drive shaft as it was turning and making the car go forward. And that's what I remember about that trip. The second one that sticks out in my mind, so my dad was that owner-operator. I was 9 years old, and he was hauling produce around the east coast of America. And so I spent the summer with him as much as I could. He and his driving partner, Big Cat Willie Babb. That was his nickname was Big Cat.
Big Cat.
And guess what I was? Of course, for that summer, I was Little Cat. And my dad was Cecil Cat. So, anyway, that was our nicknames. I have no idea. I wish I knew. You know, it's one of those stories I wish I knew. But anyway, I was everywhere that summer on the East Coast of the United States. And I think that's what gave me this love of road trips and just being out here on the open road.
Was there a place on that road trip that you remember more specifically than others on the East Coast?
On the truck?
Yeah.
Yeah, what really sticks out in my mind is I always remember we'd be down in Florida because they were hauling produce, and we would leave South Florida on the Florida Turnpike.
And which side of Florida?
So South Florida, like Miami, Fort
okay.
Lauderdale. And so we would leave down there on the Florida Turnpike, and I can still remember it for whatever reason, just that big truck heading up that road. And so I would sit sometimes in the sleeper in the back, or you know, I would sit up front on the truckers called it a doghouse. I guess it was sort of shaped like a doghouse, but it went between the two seats, the two front seats, and basically covered the engine compartment. So they call that the doghouse. And so I would sit on that. As a 9-year-old boy, I could just sit there. No seat belts.
How times have changed.
How times have changed. Yeah.
So you were four or five when you would ride down to Orlando, and then 9 in the truck.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of inspired the love of road trips.
Yeah, road trips, driving in general.
Yeah. Yeah, because you love to drive.
I love to drive.
You clearly, because here we are.
Yeah, let's see. Friday afternoon, I drove to Indianapolis and back. Saturday, I drove to the Mid-Ohio racetrack and back. Sunday, I drove to Indianapolis again for the Indianapolis 500. That was just kind of a warm-up for our 940-mile drive today.
And now here we are.
Here we are.
About over halfway.
Yeah, we're well over
halfway. Yeah. Atlanta was quite a ways back.
Yeah, we had 385 miles to go. We're in home stretch.
So back to the road trips, and I guess more cars in general. Tell me about your first car.
Oh, my first car. So I loved cars, and so they're
maybe even explain, like, why do you love cars?
That's a great question. My Uncle Alfred was the Chevy dealer in our hometown, and I remember going over there on Saturdays and, you know, just smelling, he sold tires too, so there's the smell of tires and there's the smell of the cars, and I would sit in the cars and, you know, and then I would go over there on Sundays. Once I got my license, I would go Sundays and just look at all the cars that were sitting there. He would get a Corvette every now and then, and it would be out at his house. So I'd go out there and just sit in it. And so I don't know. I've just always liked cars, and I don't know if there's one particular thing, but you know, I had cars pinned up on my wall in my bedroom. It didn't matter what kind of car it was. It was Triumph TR7s. For those who don't know what that was a car that came out in the 70s. Kind of an odd shaped car. It was kind of sloped down in the front, and that was cool. And then all of a sudden, about that time, Jeeps became very popular. Much like they are today. Jeeps are very popular, but they were popular back then for a different reason. You could go off-roading, and people would go off-roading and into the mud and big tires, and so they would big winches on the front in case they got stuck in the mud. They could pull themselves out or pull out a friend who got stuck. So my first car was a Jeep, a 1977 CJ5 Golden Eagle Special Edition.
Now, is this the Jeep that you had when we were kids?
Yeah, this is the Jeep I had when you were kids, and the Jeep just sat there, and we drove it a little bit, and then it just was kind of like, why is this just sitting here? And so I sold it.
Was there something wrong? I mean, was there a reason that it wasn't being driven, or
no?
Just because
it's just a Jeep.
It wasn't quite practical.
A Jeep when you're 16 and the doors are banging, and they're not like they are today. I mean, cold
and it
air.
had like a plastic cover, right?
Yeah, it had a cloth top and cloth doors, and they would bang against the side, and cold air would come up, and so not really a practical car when you're an adult. A great car when you're a kid. So anyway, I sold it. I regret it. Again, wish we had the 65 Plymouth. Wish we had the 77 Jeep CJ5. If I ever happen into a bunch of money, I'm going to find a 1977 Jeep CJ5 Golden Eagle. Has to be a Golden Eagle. Had a big eagle on the hood.
Was it new at the time?
It was brand new. I bought it brand new.
Wow. What did that? I mean, how much did? What did cars cost? What did brand new cars cost?
It was about $5,300. $5,300.
Brand new.
Brand new.
Wow.
Actually bought in Georgia and driven home for a road trip. Of course.
How did you have the means to buy it?
Well, I worked in the family grocery store, and so I had money from that. Sold a couple things, and then mom and dad helped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember that Jeep well.
Yeah. I wish I had it back.
Good memories.
Yes.
Top down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe that's why I'm a big fan of sunroofs in cars, and I don't even use my sunroof anymore. But maybe that's why.
Yeah.
Those formidable years in the car.
Maybe so.
The open air.
Yeah, for sure.
So you had your Jeep, and was that not the same car that you drove back and forth to college in?
Yep,
with
it's
Mom?
the same car I drove back and forth to college in with my friend then, and now my wife. So
good memories.
Yeah.
And did you go on any other road trips in that Jeep?
No, the Jeep wasn't really a road trip type of vehicle. I mean, we drove it probably around the state of Kentucky, you know, because I was a runner, so we would go to running events in it, but never far distance.
Off-roading?
A little bit off-roading. It was muddy a few times, but it was more of a street Jeep, and so kind of like they are today. And but I took it off a few times. Yeah.
And what was the gas mileage like?
It was terrible.
Okay,
so
same.
Had a big V8 engine in it, so it consumed gasoline very quickly. But cost of gasoline was, much lower than now, although it was high. But
yeah, here at the time of recording, gas is very high.
Yes, we just paid $4.99 for premium because we're driving a Bimmer. And it takes premium to make sure it runs well. We're getting 30 miles to the gallon though.
Not bad, but these gas prices are a little steep.
They're a little steep.
When was the last time they were this high?
Well, it wasn't that long ago. I guess it was back in, I don't know, 2010, 11, 12, probably when you were going off to college. I mean, it spiked up there, I remember.
Just waiting for it to come back down.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, though. As I think back to the family grocery store, back in the 70s, there was an oil embargo, just issues with the Middle East and things going on. I don't really know the details of it, but all I remember at the grocery store, our gas pumps, the price per gallon only went to 99 cents. And there was a point where it went over $1. I don't remember how much. So we had to set the pump at half the price. So if gas was, $1.20 a gallon, we would set it at 60. So, because that's the way we got around it. And then, if the person wanted $1.20, then, or $1 worth of gas, we had to compute that and double it up,
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And then there were many times we were out of gas. So there would be a sign on the pump, out of gas.
Did you pump it for people?
Yeah, so we pumped the gas for people.
Was that a universal thing? Now you pump your own gas, except for in the state of New Jersey, which I learned.
Oh, yeah, it was very common back then for somebody to pump your gas.
Okay.
Yeah, full service. I don't know when self-service came into being.
Yeah, I thought that was alarming to me the first time I drove in New Jersey, and there was somebody waiting to pump my gas. Did you know that?
Well, the reason I know that is because of this Bimmer. I'd kind of forgotten it. So I bought this Bimmer in New Jersey.
Oh, I did not know that.
So I picked it up, and I stopped to get fuel, and I get out, and I'm reaching for the hose, and the guy goes, "I got it." And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Kind of nice.
Yeah, it was kind of fun.
Okay, so you keep referencing the Bimmer. So you kind of got to give some backstory about this Bimmer, BMWs in general.
Yeah, so I always thought my brother introduced me to the brand, the BMW brand. And so he and I were chatting a couple years ago, and he's like, "No, you're the one who introduced me." And I said, "Oh, tell me more." And he goes, "Well, you rode motorcycles when you were growing up. I didn't." That's what he said. And he said, "I was headed off to Germany to serve our country in the Army." And he said, you told me, "Oh, you should buy a BMW." And my brother said, "I'm not wanting a motorcycle, I want a car." And I said, "Oh, they build cars also." And so my brother quickly, I don't remember where he's living, maybe in Indy. Anyway, he went and test drove a BMW. There was a dealer in Indy or Dayton, Ohio, somewhere. He drove the car and loved it. So he gets to Germany, and he ends up with buying a couple of used BMWs, driving them. I think one caught on fire, maybe.
Oh,
I don't remember. And then he ended up buying a brand new one and bringing it back to the States because you could go to the factory, and then it got shipped back home.
I'm sure driving the Autobahn with a BMW was quite the experience.
It was, and I visited him in 1979. I got to ride in that car all around Germany and Switzerland and Italy and England, and we made several road trips, more road trips, of course. And yeah, and you're cruising along 110, 115 miles an hour in this little 4-cylinder BMW 320.
I cannot imagine. I actually follow this photographer on Instagram. She's German, and she was in Bali the past 2 or 3 years, and she arrived in Germany for the first time to see her family, and she posted a story on the Autobahn, and it looked terrifying.
Yeah, well, we've got to go try it. We've got to try it. And the only thing I remember once, we were driving, and my brother's driving, of course, and he goes, "Something very fast is approaching." And I'm like, "Well, we're running 110. And he goes, "Yeah, it's running really fast." And this car, I don't remember if it was a Lamborghini, a Ferrari, I don't really particularly remember, but it just went and was by us and gone. And it's like, oh my gosh, they've got to be running 180, 190, 200 miles an hour.
do people, what's the likeliness of people getting in accidents?
Well, if you talk to the people over there, they will say the likelihood is very low because they know how to drive.
I see.
As over here in the States, we see people out here in the left lane right now just cruising along. Oh, they're moving over, so that's correct. They passed us and they're moving over. And
But
people here
it really varies state by state, right?
Oh, terribly. And so anyway, and we have a police officer up here. Another police officer. But Waze, we've got Waze running, and it's letting us know.
Which is your go-to?
Oh, it's my go-to GPS because it's.
You cannot trust the Apple map. It's garbage, in my personal opinion.
Yeah. So Waze, just putting in a plug there for Waze. We don't have ads on this podcast,
but there's a little personal sponsorship for Waze.
Yeah, we'll let them have that.
I think you introduced me to Waze when I was living in Haiti, and it worked there.
Yeah, that's amazing that it works in Haiti.
It really is, because there's not really a structured road system.
No, but I will tell you, we did try it one day with Tyson, the driver, and we were trying to get somewhere, and Waze let us down big time.
Oh, well.
And I'm sure Tyson remembers that story.
You just never know.
Hey, episode 2 coming up right after this episode. We're going to flip roles, and so we're going to talk to Lauren about road trips in Haiti. So stick around for that, okay?
So back to the Bimmer. What is your... Well, I have a couple of questions about Bimmers. Well, I have so many memories of my own. But what was your first BMW?
Oh.
Can you recall?
Your mom and I drove Hondas for years. I don't know.
I do remember that.
They got
as well.
great gas mileage. I commuted 120 miles a day, so we needed something that got really good gas mileage. So we owned Hondas up until 2007, and then we switched mom out. But, well, later after that. But I bought one. Oh, I guess my first one actually was later in life. It was 2003.
That was your first?
Yeah, that was my first actually.
Okay.
Yeah, and
So 2003.
No, that wasn't my first. That's a hard question. I'm really good with dates, but I'm struggling with that.
All right,
one.
well, we can come back to that one.
Late 90s. Let's put it at late 90s.
Okay.
Sometime in the late 90s, because I drove it back and forth to Lexington.
What was the make?
It was
what was the make?
Yeah.
What was the model?
It was a 325i E30. For all those Bimmer lovers out there, they'll understand that. Again, in a car, darn, wish we had that back. It's probably worth about 6 times what I paid for it.
Color?
But, it was red. I love red cars.
Yes, we know that.
I love red cars, although we're driving a white one.
With a tan interior?
No, black.
Black, okay.
And it was a 5-speed, so manual shift. Crazy car, though. Sometimes it just wouldn't start. It would
Gotta love that.
crank and crank and crank and crank, and then finally it'd start. And I remember I took it to my brother's mechanic to look it over, and he called me and let me know what was wrong with it. And he goes, the BMW gods just haven't looked down on you yet, so just hang in there. And so, but that was a great car. Drove that for a number of years. Yeah.
I do think I can recall that one.
Yeah, probably.
And then came the one in 2003. Do you want to share about that?
Yeah, 2003. I got this crazy idea that I wanted to buy a car in California. I wanted to drive it across America, specifically on Route 50. That's another story, another day. We'll talk about Route 50. So I'll never forget it. It's 2003. Our family was headed to Hot Springs, Arkansas.
For vacation.
With our good friends, the Taylors, for our spring break trip.
Yes.
And so we're driving, but I've spotted this car on eBay. And the
classic.
bidding is ending. And, didn't really want to trust internet in the car. So I reached out to my brother.
But
again.
you should preface by saying you have purchased a lot of cars on eBay.
Oh, I have purchased a lot of cars on eBay. Sight unseen, trusting. Yeah, I mean, quite a few. Probably 5, I guess, including the one we're in.
And it seems to be operating just fine.
Yeah, we're doing just fine. We're cruising at about 80 miles an hour, making time.
Anyway.
So back to the story.
Yes.
Yeah, so I reached out to my brother. Hey, I need you to watch this car, and I need you to win the auction.
Oh my goodness! And that was when David was.
Yeah, David wasn't born yet.
So
I don't think.
Your brother's first.
Yeah, my brother's first child, David Scott Jr. And so who just turned 19. So this year. So anyway, my brother's like, got it. You know, he's an eBay guy, so he's on it. I did set a max bid. I don't remember what it was. Again, it's a car should have kept. Probably worth about 5-fold what I paid for it. I believe I paid like $2,400 for it.
Wow.
It was rust-free California car.
What was the model?
So it was what we would refer to as an E21, a 1983 320i S. So it had sport seats, 5-speed, 4-cylinder.
Black interior, right?
Black interior.
Yeah, I remember that one.
So anyway, remember the goal was we're going to drive it back. So anyway, we won, of course. We won the bidding. I reached out to the guy, the seller, and I said, hey, can you hold the car for me? I'd done this before I bid on it. Can you hold? Well, look at that.
I know.
Wow, that would be an interesting photo shoot, wouldn't it?
We just passed a yard of old
I think you should
BMWs.
stop there on your way home. Exit 121. You need to get photographs.
Okay, in
All right.
Georgia.
Anyway, more to follow on that after she gets photographs. Where were we?
You won the bidding, obviously.
Won the bidding. I had asked the guy, can you hold this car? You know, I got to take off work. I got to find somebody to go with me, right? And so Lauren said that my brother, you know, his wife was pregnant, and so they actually had their son while we were on our trip. And so anyway, I reached out to 2 people that I wanted to go with me, and one was my dad and the other was my brother. And so my dad was very quick. Yep, I'm in. He was 73 at the time, retired truck driver, of course, and I thought, well, this will be great. And so I reached out to my brother, and he's like, I would love to go, you know that, but not good timing.
Not good timing with a newborn.
So the guy and I went back and forth. We finally settled on a date in July. So we made plans for that. And so we needed another driver. And so I figured my dad would drive, you know, quite a bit. More on that in a minute. But anyway, I reached out to my best friend at the time, who I knew would be up for a road trip. We had done several things together by then, not as much as we would later, but I knew he loved cars, and I'm thinking, there's no way he'll pass on a road trip. So sure enough, my friend John Casella, we now had our team that was going to pick up this car. So we arrive, oh look,
Another police.
So let's...
I mean, they are everywhere today.
They are everywhere. Local sheriff, beautiful cars.
They are not messing around.
And we'll tell ways.
Procrastinators here in the South.
So anyway, should we speed this story up, or
I mean,
we're doing okay?
However in depth you want to go.
This would have been a whole story, wouldn't it?
Probably.
Yeah. You know what? We'll leave it at that. We got the car. We flew out there. We got the car. We drove Route 50 for about half the trip till we got to Kansas, and we're like, okay, we're ready to be home. We actually only spent one night in a hotel, mostly because truck driver Cecil said we're not spending any more nights in a hotel. We're on the road. And so that's what we did. So tune in to a later podcast, and we'll go through that whole trip.
Cross-country trip on Route 50.
On Route 50.
Yes.
Which, if you haven't driven Route 50, through California, Nevada, Utah, and Colorado, then you're missing out.
Add that to the bucket list
Yep, that's a
of
bucket
road
list
trips.
item.
I have not been on that
Yeah,
one.
yeah, there you go.
Okay, so we've got the first Bimmer purchase, the first Bimmer road trip. Any other memorable? I mean, you've owned. Those who are listening should know that we are a family of BMWs.
Yes, we are a family now of BMWs. Once Hondas, but we're
Always used.
always used.
Always
I mean,
used.
Yeah, that's a podcast in itself.
It
so,
really is.
Yeah, we'll come back to that one.
But any other memorable, immediately coming to mind kind of stories with Bimmers, road trips?
Well, I mean, we bought both of yours, one in Tennessee, one in Florida.
I remember buying my first car in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Going
Tennessee.
down there, driving it off the lot. 95.
95, 325.
Dark green, forest green, 2-door, tan interior.
Yep.
And wow, what a memory.
And we should have kept it.
We should have also kept that one.
Because-
You know, I do remember senior year of high school, my car was probably the oldest car of all my classmates. And yet I do recall somebody suggesting that I be in the running for best car.
Yeah.
And to me, that was like kind of laughable because some of my classmates had very nice cars.
Yeah.
I didn't win, but just goes to show the
Yeah.
appreciation for
Yeah.
the vintage BMW.
Yeah, vintage BMW. So, yeah, those are, we've owned, so, yeah,
Between the four of us.
between the four of us, Henry included.
Any idea? A rough number?
Oh gosh.
Well, it's hard with Henry. in
It's
the
hard with
mix.
Henry because if you go over to his shop, there's BMWs sitting everywhere.
And he flips them, no?
He flips them, not over. Well, he has done that, but he flips them, selling them. Buy, sell, take the parts off.
The last car that I rode in of his, I think it's the one he has now.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a radio or anything up front.
It has nothing but an
Speedometer?
I believe a temperature gauge. There is no speedometer. There's no RPM. There's nothing. And he built this thing. He rebuilt this thing himself from the ground up. It's not pretty,
It's loud.
but it is fast and loud.
I was alarmed when I got into it. It's like, it just was blank. It was like a blank slate.
Yep. Good way to put it.
All that to say, a lot of BMWs in the family.
Yeah.
In the extended family, too.
Yeah, between my brother and I, numerous BMWs. Cousin Stuart, he's had BMWs. They're just everywhere.
They're everywhere in the family. And, it's a blessing and a curse sometimes, especially when you're without a car and you need one. And you must pass through the BMW gauge. I was without a car for probably 4 months.
Yeah, well, we searched, and it was not a good time to be searching for
It's
a
not
car.
a good time.
So we ended up with another German brand, a Volkswagen.
Oh, no, I'm thinking back to 2018
Oh.
and getting the red.
Oh, 2018. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So, yeah.
The one in Florida.
Yeah, that took a bit of searching and had to fit our budget and some criteria. And I drove that home from Miami.
And it was originally from Puerto Rico, right?
Originally shipped to Puerto Rico. Yeah, probably another story and another car
Probably.
we should still have in our
I know.
ownership. What is wrong with us?
Lessons learned.
Lessons learned.
We are not hanging on to the Volkswagen, though.
No, the
That's
Volkswagen.
not worthy of...
No, nothing wrong with the Volkswagen, okay? But
Yeah. It's a Tiguan, nothing special.
Yeah, it's if you're not driving a Bimmer, you're just not driving.
It is an experience.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It's always an experience in a Bimmer. There's just something about a Bimmer. It smells different. It drives different. I don't know, and they're just extremely reliable. So we're now up to 31 miles a gallon.
That's
driving
pretty
80 miles
impressive.
an hour.
I don't know. I'm obviously not a car connoisseur, but you can tell me if other makes are like this. But the steering on the BMW is very quality.
Yes. Very
versus
solid.
yeah, like when you are driving, I mean, like even my Tiguan, like it's just so sensitive, whereas the BMW feels sturdy and
Solid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, is that unique to the brand?
It seems unique to the brand. I don't know. Maybe there's other brands because we don't drive a lot of other brands.
You're right.
But it's solid. And the other thing I would say about them, my brother Scott, unfortunately, that first BMW that he brought back to the States, he was involved in a very serious accident, and he basically walked away from it. And I always remember he said the guy who stopped to help him said, "I can't believe you walked out of that car."
Wow.
And so, anyway, and then our second experience with a crash is my wife in 2017, November, I always remember. She messages me, I've been in an accident. She was traveling from downtown Cincinnati out up I-71, which she does not typically do. A big truck moved over on her. She spun, she hit a retaining wall, and she basically walked away from it. And I'm confident if she'd have been driving a Honda, maybe, that maybe she wouldn't have walked away from it. So we think they're very safe.
Mm-hmm. Big fans over here for many reasons.
Yes.
Well, it's been a great chat.
Yeah, great chat. So
we have many more stories.
Yeah.
Many more road trip stories, more Bimmer stories, I'm sure.
More stories.
And
so yeah. Check us out at dantheroadtripguy.com, where you can find all of our stories.
And we'll catch you next time.
Yeah. Episode 2.